The cry in the storm. The wind screamed like a beast in pain. Snow slammed against the trees and turned the whole forest white. Ice covered the ground like glass. Nothing moved. No birds, no animals. Just the storm. But then, through the howl of the wind, came a sound. It was weak, broken. A cry. Jake stopped walking. He was a human, tall, strong, with a thick coat and a beard full of snow. He had been out hunting, but now he froze in place. That sound. It was not the wind. It was the sound of a child. Jake turned his head, listening. The cry came again. Faint, distant, high-pitched, like a child calling for help. "Hello?" Jake shouted, voice lost in the storm. No answer. He looked around. Snow covered everything. The path behind him was gone. But the cry came again. Closer this time. Without another thought, Jake started moving. He pushed through deep snow, boots sinking with every step. Trees creaked around him, heavy with ice. The wind slapped his face, but he didn't stop. The cry came again. Jake ran now, faster, heart beating loud. Then, he saw something, a shape, small and shaking, half buried under snow near a fallen log. He rushed forward and dropped to his knees. It was a child, but not human. The skin was light blue, the face thin and alien. Big black eyes looked up at him, full of fear. Tiny arms were wrapped around its chest. The child wore only thin cloth, already frozen stiff. Jake didn't speak. He took off his thick coat and wrapped it around the child. The little alien flinched at first, but then clung to him, shivering hard. "It's okay," Jake said softly. "You're safe now." The child looked up, mouth trembling. "Mama." Jake's heart sank. Where was the mother? He picked up the child carefully and stood. The child was light, too light. Bones showed under its skin. It hadn't eaten in days. As he turned to go back, something moved behind the trees. Jake froze. The storm made it hard to see, but he was sure something was there. He tightened his grip on the child and moved faster, back toward the trail he thought he came from. The wind screamed again, and he heard branches snap behind him. Suddenly he stopped again, another shape in the snow, not moving. He stepped closer and saw it, a woman, tall, thin, alien, same blue skin, but darker. She lay in the snow, barely breathing. Her arms were wrapped around her chest, her legs half buried. Her clothes were ripped and her eyes were closed. Jake bent down. The woman's lips were blue. Her face was covered in frost. Her hands were raw and red. She had taken off her coat. She had given it to the child. Jake touched her face. Her skin was ice cold. She opened her eyes, just a little. Her voice was like a whisper. "My child? Is he?" "He's alive," Jake said quickly. "I've got him. He's safe." She looked up at him, eyes full of pain. And then she passed out. Jake didn't wait. He took off his backpack, laid the child inside it carefully, and zipped it halfway to protect from the cold. Then he lifted the woman in his arms. He had to go. Now. The forest was still moving. Something or someone was still watching. It took him 30 long minutes to reach his cabin. The storm had covered his door in snow. He kicked it open, rushed inside, and slammed it shut. He dropped the woman onto the bed and pulled off wet clothes. He lit the fireplace fast, throwing in logs, turning the cold air into heat. The child sat close to the fire, wrapped in Jake's coat, still shaking, still quiet. Jake boiled water, grabbed emergency food packs, and sat beside the woman. He checked her pulse. She was still alive. He poured warm water into her mouth slowly. Her fingers twitched. Her eyes opened. Barely. The child crawled closer. "Mama?" The woman looked up. A tear slid from her eye. Jake watched in silence. He had never seen something like this. Two beings, not from Earth, nearly frozen to death in his forest. And now, somehow, they were his responsibility. Outside, the wind screamed louder. Jake stood, grabbed his hunting rifle, and looked out the window. The snow was falling harder now, but deep in the trees, something was still moving. The half-frozen mother. The fire cracked softly. Steam rose from a metal pot on the stove. The scent of hot broth filled the small wooden cabin. But Jake wasn't hungry. He was watching the alien woman lying on his bed, her skin still pale, her lips still trembling. The child, small, blue, and still afraid, sat close to the fire wrapped in Jake's thick coat. The child hadn't spoken since whispering "Mama" earlier. Jake moved slowly, placing warm cloth on the woman's forehead. Her breathing was weak, but steady now. Suddenly, her eyes opened, not wide, but enough to see. At first, she looked at the ceiling. Then her gaze moved to the child. Her voice came out cracked, almost broken. "Aru." The child turned and crawled to her. "Mama." Jake stepped back. For a few seconds, nothing else mattered. The mother and child held each other tightly. The child cried silently. The mother's frozen fingers tried to brush the child's head, but they were too stiff to move well. Jake stayed quiet. He had seen war before. He had seen death. But this was different. The mother looked up at him. Her big black eyes were full of confusion and fear. Her body tensed. She pulled her child closer. Jake raised both hands. "I'm not your enemy," he said calmly. "I found your child. Then I found you." She didn't answer. She just watched him. He poured hot water into a cup and held it out toward her. "Drink, it'll help." She hesitated, but then took the cup with both hands. Her fingers shook badly. She took a sip. Her breathing slowed. Jake sat near the fire, not too close. After a long silence, she spoke. Her voice was low, careful. "You are human?" "Yes. You saved us?" Jake nodded. "You were dying in the snow. Your child would have died next." She lowered her head. "I gave him my coat. It was all I had left." Jake looked at the fire. "I saw that." She looked at him again. "Why help us?" Jake didn't answer right away. He stared at the flames. "Because no one helped my family when I needed it," he said finally. Silence filled the cabin. The woman closed her eyes. She was still weak, but her body was warming up slowly. The child curled up beside her, resting at last. Jake stood and walked to the window. And then, he froze. Far, far between the trees, a soft green light blinked once. Then again. He grabbed his old binoculars from the shelf. When he looked through them, his jaw clenched. There were tracks in the snow. Not animal tracks, big, heavy boots. And machines. Long, deep trails made by hovercraft. He whispered to himself. Someone followed them. He turned quickly. "What's your name?" The woman opened her eyes. "Sayalari." "Sayalari," Jake said, his voice serious now. "Are you being hunted?" She looked away, pain on her face. Then she nodded. "By who?" he asked. She held her child tighter. "Slavers, from the dark rings. They raid small colonies. They killed my mate. I ran for days. Then the storm came." Jake clenched his fists. "And they're still coming." "Yes." Jake grabbed his rifle from the wall and started loading it. "You don't have to fight," Sayalari said weakly. "You can give us to them, they'll pay you." Jake turned sharply. "I don't sell people, I save them." Sayalari looked at him for a long time. Slowly, a tear slipped from her eye. "You are not like others." "I'm not like them," he replied. He moved around the cabin, checking weapons, preparing traps. "You need to rest," he told her. "Stay hidden. Feed the child. Tomorrow, I prepare." "Prepare for what?" she asked. Jake looked out the window again. The green light blinked once more, closer this time. He turned to her. "War." The cabin and the fire. The fire glowed bright in the corner of the wooden cabin. Snow still hit the windows outside. But inside, the warmth pushed back the cold. The walls were old, made of thick logs. A hunting rifle leaned against the door. Knives hung near the stove. It was not a rich home, but it was safe. It was human. Jake moved quietly, stirring soup in a small pot. He looked back at the bed where Sayalari and her child rested. The child was finally sleeping. Sayalari's eyes were open, watching the fire like it held secrets. "You sleep at night?" she asked. Jake looked at her. "Sometimes." She sat up slowly. Her arms trembled, but she stayed strong for her child. "You have weapons. You live alone." "Why?" Jake poured soup into 2 metal bowls. He walked over and handed one to her. "Used to be a soldier," he said. "Now I just hunt, fish, keep to myself." She sipped the soup, her hands still shaky. Her eyes watched him, full of questions. "Why do you help people like us?" she asked again. Jake didn't answer right away. He sat down near the fire. "My village once called for help," he said softly. "Nobody came. My sister died in the snow. I swore I'd never leave someone behind. Not again." Sayalari looked down at her child. "You lost family." "So did you," Jake said. Their eyes met. Different worlds, different species, but the same pain. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was heavy with shared loss. Suddenly the child woke. He cried softly. Sayalari held him close, whispering gentle words in her own language. Jake couldn't understand, but he didn't need to. A mother's voice is the same everywhere. Jake stood and walked to the window. Far off, the trees were still, but deep in the woods, he saw it again. A light. This time, red. He narrowed his eyes. The slavers weren't guessing. They were tracking. Closer. He turned and opened a metal box under the table. Inside were grenades, ammo, and a map. He spread the map on the table. Sayalari got up and came near. "What is this?" "Paths. Hidden trails. High ground. I know this forest better than they ever will." She touched the map gently. "You will fight?" Jake looked at her. "They want your child. They'll come hard. And you will stand between us and them?" He nodded. "I've fought worse." Sayalari looked away. "I don't understand your kind. My people fear humans." Jake gave a small laugh. "Humans fear everything too. That's why we fight. But sometimes," he paused, "we protect too." She sat down across from him. "I don't have anything to give." Jake looked at her serious. "You already gave your coat, you gave warmth, that's more than most." A soft beep interrupted them. Jake rushed to the small screen near the window. A motion sensor had triggered. He clicked the screen. A blurry figure moved through the trees. Humanoid. Large. Sayalari moved fast, grabbed her child, and backed into the corner. Jake stood still, watching the screen. 1 figure, then 2, then 4. "They've arrived," he said. Sayalari's breath caught. "What do we do?" Jake turned to her, his voice calm but firm. "We survive." He gave her a small bag. "Inside, blanket, water, food. If I say run, you take your child and head north. There's an old bunker under the ridge. You'll be safe there." She took the bag but looked at him. "And you?" "I'll slow them down." She hesitated. "You could run with us." He smiled faintly. "Running's not really my thing." The fire crackled louder now. Jake placed a rifle on the table, loaded and ready. He checked the traps near the door, then dimmed the lights. "Get some rest," he said. "Tomorrow will be louder than tonight." Sayalari stood there for a moment. Then slowly, she stepped closer. She placed her hand on his shoulder, lightly, unsure. "Thank you," she whispered. Jake didn't speak, but in that quiet moment, the cabin felt more than warm. It felt like something long lost. It felt like trust. The threat that follows. The morning was quiet, but it wasn't peaceful. The snow had stopped. The sky was gray, Trees stood like frozen giants, but Jake felt it in his bones. Something was wrong. He stood outside the cabin with his rifle, scanning the woods. His breath made small clouds in the air. Behind him, Sayalari watched from the window. Her child was still sleeping. Jake stepped into the snow, slow and careful. Tracks were everywhere, his own and something else. He followed the trail until he found what he feared, boot prints. Not his, larger, deeper, and more than one pair. He crouched low. The prints came from the west. They circled the trees, then vanished. He looked up. Something moved in the trees above. Fast, silent. He raised his rifle, but it was already gone. He turned back and ran toward the cabin. Inside, Sayalari stepped back as Jake slammed the door shut. "They're here," he said. Her face turned pale. "How many?" Jake checked his gun. "Too many." A sudden snap echoed through the trees. Then another. A sharp crack, metal against wood. Jake peeked out the window. Drones, small, black, flying machines. They were scanning the cabin. "Get down," he shouted. One of the drones fired a bright red beam. It hit the window, shattering glass across the room. Sayalari covered her child as Jake rolled to the side and returned fire. His bullet hit the drone. It sparked and fell. Two more came. Jake fired again, knocking down one. But the third drone crashed into the roof. Boom! Smoke and fire spilled through the ceiling. Jake pulled Sayalari and the child toward the basement trapdoor. "Down there. Now." She hesitated. "What about you? I'll hold them off. Go." She obeyed, vanishing into the shadows below. Jake turned back to the door. Voices, metal footsteps. They were coming. He set traps, wires, bombs, trip snares. He grabbed another rifle. Then, silence. The front door shook. A voice came through. A deep, robotic voice. "Hand over the child. We will spare you." Jake shouted back. "I've got a better idea. Go to hell." The door burst open. 3 figures stepped in. Tall, armored, glowing helmets. Jake fired. One dropped. The others dodged, firing back. He rolled behind the table, bullets tearing wood. Suddenly, one of the tripwires snapped. Boom. The cabin shook. One slaver screamed. His armor cracked and body fell. Jake stood up, panting. His arm was bleeding. He reloaded and aimed at the last soldier. The slaver lifted his weapon but then stopped. Behind Jake, Sayalari appeared, her eyes glowing faintly, holding a strange alien blade. "You want my child?" she said coldly. "Come get him." The slaver moved, too slow. She struck. The blade sliced through metal like paper. The slaver fell, dead. Jake stared. "I told you to stay down there," he said. "I did," she replied, "until I heard them say child." Jake gave a weak smile. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." She helped him to a chair. The fire still burned, smoke rising through the broken roof. The cabin was half destroyed. "We can't stay here," she said. "They'll come again." Jake nodded. "Next time it won't be drones, it'll be the full crew." Sayalari looked at him with fear in her eyes. "Then we run." Jake shook his head. "No, we don't run anymore. We fight." She was silent. "But why?" she asked. "You don't even know us." Jake stared at the fire. "I don't need to. You're alive. That's enough." He stood slowly, holding his injured arm. "We have one night, then we make our stand." Sayalari placed her hand on his. She didn't speak, but her touch said everything. Gratitude, respect, maybe even hope. Jake looked down at her hand. It wasn't human, but it was warm. The first attack night fell slowly over the frozen forest. The wind had calmed. The stars peeked through dark clouds. Snow covered the broken cabin like a blanket. It looked peaceful from above, but inside war was coming. Jake sat at the old wooden table, wrapping a cloth around his wounded arm. He looked tired. Blood stained his shirt, but his eyes were sharp. Sayalari sat across from him, holding her child close. Her blade rested beside her, cold silver, humming softly. Her face was calm, but inside, her heart raced. They will return. With more, she said. I know, Jake replied. They will not stop until we are dead. I know that too. She hesitated. Then why are you still here? Jake looked at her. Because this time I choose to stay. Solari was silent. Jake stood up, walking toward a wooden chest. He opened it, pulling out strange devices, old tech from his army days, EMP darts, magnetic mines, flash beacons. He placed each one on the table like chess pieces. We have traps, he said. We have guns. And now, we have you. She raised her eyebrow. You're faster than any soldier I've seen, he continued. And that blade? I want to see it in action again. She gave a faint smile. You're not so bad yourself. They worked together for hours. They lined the trees with motion sensors, buried charges under the snow, set up a defense circle using broken walls and rocks. Solari taught Jake how to use a pulse shield, a small alien device she had hidden under her clothes. It wasn't much, but it was enough to hurt them. The child slept in the basement, wrapped in blankets, unaware of the storm to come. Just before dawn, it began. A low hum vibrated through the ground. Jake grabbed his rifle and looked to the sky. A dark shape moved above the trees. A ship, bigger than before, faster. It landed without sound. Steam hissed from its sides. Lights blinked red along its body then. The slavers came, armored, armed. 12 of them. They walked like wolves, fast, organized, hungry. Jake waited behind a broken log wall, his finger on the trigger, his breath slow. Solari crouched beside him, her blade glowing. They split up, she whispered. 4 go left, 3 toward the house, others circling behind. Jake nodded. We take them one group at a time. First, trap snapped. A hidden mine exploded under 2 soldiers. Metal flew. Screams echoed. The fight had begun. Jake rose and fired. 1 slaver fell. Another ducked behind a tree. Solari jumped over the wall like a shadow. Her blade flashed. 1 soldier didn't even see her coming. He fell in seconds. The snow turned red. Another. Trap triggered. EMP burst. 2 helmets sparked and shorted. They dropped their guns blind. Jake ran forward shouting, Now! Bullets flew. Snow burst. Trees cracked. A slaver charged toward the house. Solari chased him. He turned to shoot, but she was already behind him. 1 slice. Silence. Jake ducked behind a log, breathing hard. 6 down, he said. Solari landed beside him. 6 more. Suddenly, the ship's door opened again. A bigger figure stepped out. He was different, taller, heavier, gold armor. 2 red eyes glowing like fire. The commander, Solari whispered. Jake cursed. Looks like trouble. The commander lifted a strange cannon and aimed it at the cabin. Jake shouted, Get to the child. But before Solari could move, the cannon fired. The beam hit the front of the cabin. Wood exploded. Fire roared. Jake was thrown back. His head hit a rock. Darkness. When he woke, the world was smoke and screams. Solari knelt beside him, shaking his shoulder. You're alive, she said, but bleeding. Jake pushed himself up. Where's the child? In the tunnel. Safe. For now. Jake looked around. 3 slavers still standing. The commander leading them. We end this, he said. He handed Solari his last grenade. You throw better. She took it without smiling. Jake limped toward the left. Solari moved right. They split like hunters. Jake took down 1 guard with a clean shot. Solari sliced the other across the legs. Only the commander remained. He turned and saw Solari running toward him. He raised his cannon, but too late. She leapt through smoke and threw the grenade. It landed at his feet. He looked down. Boom. When the smoke cleared, nothing stood but quiet trees. Jake walked out slowly. His body hurt everywhere. He saw Solari on her knees holding her child. She looked up at him. Her face was dirty, eyes full of tears. But alive. You did it, she whispered. Jake smiled weakly. We did it. The human who wouldn't run. The fire was gone. Only smoke remained, curling from black logs, mixing with morning fog. Trees stood silent again. The blood had frozen on the snow. The air was still, but nothing felt safe. Jake sat on a broken step outside what was left of his cabin. His arm was wrapped in cloth. His ribs hurt with every breath. But he was alive. Inside, Selari fed her child, from a ration pack. The child's eyes still wide with fear but slowly calming. Jake looked out at the forest. His traps were finished, his ammo low. And he knew what was coming next. This wasn't over. Selari stepped outside holding a warm blanket. You should rest, she said. Jake gave a weak smile. I'll sleep when it's done. She sat beside him. There was silence, but not cold silence. Something softer. Your people, she said. They would not believe what you've done for us. Jake didn't look at her. My people don't even know I'm here. She tilted her head. Why live alone? He paused, then spoke, quietly. Too many wars, too many graves, I came here to forget. Selari placed the blanket over his shoulders. And now? Jake looked at her. You and your child. Reminded me why I fought in the first place. She didn't reply. But her eyes said enough. Then, his wrist communicator beeped. He looked down. A message. Final wave inbound. 8 minutes. He stood quickly. They're sending one last group, he said. Heavier, smarter, maybe even machines. Selari's face tightened. Then we run. Jake looked her dead in the eyes. You run, I stay. No. She stepped forward. We stay together. He placed his hand on her shoulder. Firm. Gentle. I slowed them this far. But if I go with you, they'll follow. They'll never stop. She grabbed his hand. You don't have to die. Jake smiled softly. Maybe not. But someone has to stand and say, enough. Tears welled in her eyes. Jake stepped inside and picked up an old beacon. He pressed a button. A small red light blinked. What is that? Selari asked. An old call, Jake said. Emergency signal. If any humans pick it up, they'll come. Will they be in time? Jake shook his head. Maybe not for me. But for you? I hope so. He walked to the child, knelt down, and smiled. Take care of your mother, he said gently. She's braver than she knows. The child looked at him, unsure, but nodded. Jake opened the floor panel and helped Selari climb down into the hidden tunnel under the cabin. She grabbed his hand once more. You are the first human I ever trusted, she said. He nodded. And you're the first alien who ever gave me hope. They looked at each other one last time. Then he closed the panel. Alone again, but not broken. Jake picked up his rifle, his sidearm, his last grenade. He stood tall, straight. Snow began to fall again. Light, cold, gentle. Far in the sky, a shape appeared. Not a ship this time, a drone swarm. Hundreds. Jake lit a flare and raised it high. Come on then, he said. Let's finish this. Compassion is power. The flare burned red in Jake's hand. Above him, the sky filled with black dots. Drones, hundreds, flying fast, like a metal storm. Jake didn't blink. He stood tall in the snow, weapon ready, jaw clenched. He wasn't just a man anymore. He was the wall between life and death. Below the cabin in the frozen tunnel, Selari held her child close. Her ears heard the hum above, getting louder. She knew what was happening. Jake was giving his last breath to buy her one more. The child whispered, Is he going to die? Selari said nothing, because she didn't know the answer. But her heart ached like it already knew. On the surface, the drones circled Jake like hungry wolves. One gave a warning beep. It spoke in a voice like metal grinding. "You are outnumbered. Surrender the alien child." Jake raised his middle finger. "Come, take him." The drones opened fire. Jake dove behind broken walls, firing back. One drone burst, then two, then five. But there were too many. A rocket exploded near him, throwing him against a tree. Blood ran from his head. He stood again, shaking, bleeding, smiling. "You call this a final wave?" he yelled. "I've seen scarier faces in a mirror." He fired again. Then his rifle clicked empty. He pulled his pistol, shot 3 more drones. Another blast hit near him. Wood and snow exploded. He fell. This time, he didn't get up fast. Deep in the tunnel, Sailari felt it. Something broke. She couldn't stay. She placed her child behind a stone slab and kissed his forehead. "Don't move, no matter what happens." She climbed the ladder fast, rage building in her chest. When she stepped outside, her eyes burned. The sky was on fire. Jake lay still in the snow, and the drones turned toward her. She screamed, a sound not made of fear, but fury. Her blade came alive. Silver light cut the air. She moved like lightning, sliced one drone, jumped, spun, cut another. She didn't stop. But even her speed had limits. One drone fired at her leg. She dropped to a knee. The swarm closed in, and then a blast of thunder shook the sky. A new ship appeared, huge, silver, bearing the old Earth symbol, a broken sword wrapped in wings. Human rescue. The beacon had worked. The ship hovered. Guns unfolded. Hostile drones identified. Permission to engage. Jake, still breathing weakly, whispered, "Engage!" Laser fire filled the sky. One by one, the drones fell. The sky cleared. Silence. Then boots landed in the snow. 3 humans in armor rushed toward Jake. "Found him," one shouted. "Still alive." Another found Sailari. "She's wounded. Get medics down here." Hours later, inside the rescue ship, Jake lay in a clean bed. Tubes in his arm. Machines humming. Sailari sat beside him, bandaged, eyes watching. He opened his eyes slowly. "You didn't run," he said. "You didn't die," she replied. He smiled. "We both failed." They both laughed, a soft, tired laugh. Then her child climbed up beside the bed and placed a hand on Jake's chest. "You saved us," he said in a small voice. Jake nodded. "And you reminded me why humans still matter." Later, as the ship flew over the forest, Jake looked out the window. The trees looked peaceful again. Sailari sat beside him, quiet. Then she asked, "Why did you do it?" Jake didn't speak for a moment. Then he turned to her. "Because compassion is stronger than fear." The end.